This is The Shift, Stories of Resistance and Resilience, a multi-platform conversation series produced and hosted by Mark Travis Rivera, the professional storyteller. I believe that we must embrace the power of stories to create a more inclusive world. So this series aims to share perspectives, insights, and stories from professionals around the world about the role that resistance and resilience plays in our personal and professional lives. So, tune in, listen up, take notes, and recognize our shared humanity. This is The Shift. Hey. I think we're streaming on LinkedIn, and so I'm just gonna go ahead and ping my colleague Melissa to let me know whether we are live streamed or not. Hopefully we are. Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Mark Travis Rivera. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the CEO and founder of The Professional Storyteller, where I embrace the power of stories to create a more inclusive world. I do that through 5 pillars of activities: choreography, coaching, consulting, speaking, and writing. And I'm also the host and producer and creator of The Shift, Stories of Resistance and Resilience, a multi-platform series aimed to have real conversations with real people and thought leaders and industry leaders and experts across industries about how to navigate the times we are living in this moment. Because we are seeing a shift, and it's not always for the best. And so I'm super excited to be having this series and having these conversations. I also want to remind folks that my Power of Purpose short-term coaching pilot program has launched. It will begin in Q2. If you are interested in being a part of the pilot program, you get 3 30-minute sessions over the course of 3 weeks, and it's $150, which is the pilot price. And I'm looking to get feedback on this approach and methodology to my programs. As a coach, all of my programs go through a pilot phase. And from there, I continue to refine it and improve it for future clients. And so if you're interested in that, you can go ahead into the show notes and click the POP client intake form. And then a member of my team will reach out to you to schedule your initial call with me. And then if you decide you want to move forward, we'll send you a contract and you make the deposit and all that good stuff. So just want to put that out there. That will begin in Q2 of this year. There is so much happening, but today is also Wear Green Day in honor of Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month. I am someone who was born premature. My mom gave birth to me at 5.5 months. I weighed 1 pound. And as a result of my birth circumstances, I developed cerebral palsy. And for me, it mostly affects me from the hips down. Some people look at me, they don't realize that I have a disability anymore the way they used to. They just think I have a gay walk, but they don't realize it's not a gay walk, it's a crip walk because I'm crippled. And I may be crippled, but I'm not broken, because that's what the title of my memoir is going to be. And I am extremely honored to be welcomed today by one of my dearest friends and closest colleagues, Obella Obbo. He uses he, him pronouns. And he is one of my favorite humans on the planet. And I know lots of people, so that says a lot. And he is the radical empath. And I will always be proud to have helped him come to that conclusion. Obella Obbo is a DEI, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Specialist, a licensed therapist, and creative artist who loves to talk about identity, cultivate growth environments, and strategize on how to turn compassion into action. As the radical empath, Obella aims to use his years of experience and his lens as a Black, queer, second-generation Ugandan American man to decolonize toxic belief systems and reframe them to empower folks to be their most authentic versions of themselves and create an accepting community of healing. And he is my guest today on The Shift, which will be our last live stream, y'all. For those who live stream, tune into the live streams on Tuesdays. I'm so sorry, but today is the last one. Because of new commitments, I need to shift how I do the shift, no pun intended. And so we're going into a batch recording model. where I record 2 episodes a week, and then we'll continue to release those across platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. So today is our last live stream, and so I couldn't think of a better person to wrap it up with than someone who regularly attends the shift, my friend Obella Obbo. Welcome, Obella.
Thanks. Well, thank you, Mark. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for helping me out on a pinch. There are some friends you just have to like, hey, friend, listen, it's been one of those months. I need your help. And Obella was like, I got you. And I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, you already know I'm at the shift stand, so
Yes.
I was going to be here anyway.
Yes. So Obella, I know who you are outside the professional highlights I read in your bio, but can you share a little bit with our audience who you are?
Yeah, y'all don't know, but before we got onto this live, Mark was dragging me because he said my bio doesn't talk enough about what I do. So quickly, before I talk about me personally, professionally, I have a mental health background. I came up doing social impact work or in nonprofit spaces. So I worked for college prep programs, in low income communities specifically. I worked for a domestic violence shelter, doing work with both the survivors and the alleged perpetrators, which was a really unique experience. I worked with kids with behavioral disabilities. I was kind of all over the place. And then when I transitioned into sort of more DEI work, which I did through the medium of higher ed and multicultural affairs, I started working like in a bunch of different corporate spaces, and kind of all over. And I think that was really validating because it helped sort of prove to me that the core concept translates no matter what particular field you're in. And through that collaborative aspect, you get to the really niche stuff that is about whatever particular field you're in. And that's really fun. I separately, when I was talking to Mark a while ago, talked about how like being a therapist was kind of like core to my character. So like a lot of the me outside of my work is kind of very similar to the me inside of my work. I spend a lot of time with people. I love people. I love socializing. I love being in community. I love, kin keeping, as it were. But also, I'm a big nerd. I read comics every week. I love comic books. I am an audiophile. I listen to so much music on a regular basis. If you suggest a TV show or a movie to me, I might pretend like I'm going to watch it, but there is almost a 95% chance that I will not. If you suggest an album to me or a song, 100% chance it will get listened to. We will have tons to talk about. Like, music is just where I'm able to put my energy. And separately, I have ADHD. It's hard to sit and watch a show for an extended period of time. I can listen to music while I do so many things. It makes it so much.
I feel that way about podcasts and music. I love being able to do that. So because of my ADHD diagnosis, which came later in life, I realized I wasn't reading as much as I used to. And I was like, well, what has shifted for me? Again, no pun intended. It was me realizing that I no longer had the attention span to really sit down and read a traditional book. And so, meanwhile, anyone who knows me knows that buying books is like, it's like how people buy, I don't know, like socks. Like you need to buy them.
You can never have enough.
A bunch of socks, but you can never have enough. And so, and of course, I still have a whole bunch of books in New Jersey in my mom's garage that I need to get down here somehow. Anywho, neither here nor there. The point I'm making is that discovering audiobooks has helped me. So right now I'm reading Dreams of My Father by President Barack Obama. And he's reading the audiobook version, which I prefer to hear the audiobooks read by the authors. I think it just feels more, and it's an interesting book. I know I'm late to the party in terms of this book, but that man is so prolific. And he was prolific back then when he wrote the book, and he's even more prolific now. And discovering how to incorporate the things that we love in a way that's accessible to us, I think is really, really important. So I'm glad you were able to talk about that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And also no such thing as being late to the party, especially with a book. Like whenever a book hits you is when it was supposed to hit you.
Ain't that the truth? Because I've been meaning to read Unchained by Glennon Doyle, but it wasn't until this year that I was able to get through it, and I'm so glad. And I also just finished Alice of the Heart. I finished Bits and Pieces, My Brother, My Mother, My Brother and Me by Whoopi Goldberg. I just finished The Master of Me by Keke Palmer. Yeah, and so I've been reading a lot more this year because I start my day with the audiobook
I
as I
love that.
shower, as I get ready. So yeah,
Yeah.
yes, I'm super excited.
Um,
Go
but
ahead.
yeah, that's pretty much me. I like to cook. I like
Yes,
to eat. So,
yes. Oh, I know
you
that.
know.
But let them throw
But
down.
yeah, that's me.
Yeah,
But,
and you are a loving partner and a great friend
yeah.
and colleague. And so I have to ask you this, and I've been, this is a question I ask all of my guests. And so I know you've heard this question because you attend the shift pretty regularly. What is your personal concept of resistance and resilience, Obella?
Yeah, I was like sitting with this one because I'm like I want to contribute to uh, what so many people have already said in a way that isn't is additive. I would say that like resistance are the tools that you use to push things away. Resilience are the tools that you use to pull yourself up. Um,
Mm,
I think that like it's I think important to distinguish that like there are tools of resistance and resilience, and that like resistance and resilience aren't sort of like things that you are in that same way, right? Like a person can be defiant and that might be their tool of resistance, but like they're these things that are a bit separate from you, and I think that's also valuable because you get to look at them a bit separate from you. You get to decide why you choose to use certain tools and whether or not they're tools you want to continue to use as forms of resistance or resilience. And it makes it easier for them to also shift with where you are in life, right? So like if I'm resilient because of my community, because I'm leaning on my community often, but right now I'm in an era of independence, so I need new tools of resilience because I'm not trying to lean on people as much for ways that are or for reasons that don't have to be unhealthy. It can be about I'm trying to uplift myself, I'm trying to find this thing within myself, etc. And so I need new tools. And so, what is going to pull me up through hardship? What
yeah,
do I need to help push back against, uh, you know, self hate and any other tool of oppression that is going to be weaponized against me?
yeah. I knew you would have a prolific answer to that, but I love this idea around reframing resilience as not something you are, but as something you do. I think a lot of us sometimes, I'm resilient, and we slap that on our chest like it's some superhero badge of honor. And sometimes I tell people I don't want to be resilient. I want to be soft. I want to feel easy.
Mm-hmm.
To not have to stress about things, and I want things to be easier than it has been. And not because I am more deserving than anyone else. It's just that that's the kind of life I want.
But
And
even more than that, like softness can be a tool of resilience, right?
Mhm.
Like I think when we label ourselves as certain things, it also boxes what those things are into. Um, what it's the same thing with like good or bad. You are good or bad versus like good or bad and are things that you do, right?
Mhm.
And if we're able to embrace that we can do bad, it also helps take the weight off of how we like make mistakes or
Mhm.
how we might cause harm, right? And there's a level of acceptance there. There's a level of like release to it, right? And it makes it more malleable. It makes it more agile. I think that like oftentimes labels in their essence are valuable, but like labels themselves are kind of like the opposite of understanding because definitions really exist interpersonally,
Yeah.
right? Like you might know what my resilience means, but my resilience isn't everyone's resilience. And so I
Mhm.
can't expect everyone to know, but I can expect you to know because we're connected.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that that's, important so that we don't get too pressed upon things that we've labeled ourselves as.
Yeah. And what's so interesting? I went to a circuit party for queer folks of color in Atlanta, where I live,
Love
this weekend, and I told you the picture of my outfit.
that.
And we're not going to share that on LinkedIn. But I went with a guy friend, and it was our first time hanging out in public. And he said something to me that I can't stop thinking about ever since that conversation happened, which was, Mark, you say that you're very hyper vigilant when you're in public. You're looking out for danger. He was like, but do you ever think about why people are gawking at you? And because he's like, I can sense that there are people in the room that were jealous of you. He's like, I can sense that there are people in the room that were so enamored by you, they didn't know how to deal with your authenticity. And I kept talking to someone about it. I was like, God, every time I go out, I get gawked at because I'm feminine, because I'm fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get that. In my head, I was like, damn, if these mofos only knew how insecure I was. And I was like, if they can't stand me now, wait till I start liking myself for real, for real. You're gonna see a whole different level of intensity of the light and the brightness of who I am. And what he helped me realize was that me simply existing in my fullness is a form of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
It is a form of me saying, despite your arbitrary notions of gender and what sexuality is and isn't, despite your desire to erase me and my humanity and my rights as a queer, visibly queer, gender expansive person, I will not. I will not cave under the pressure. And I have to remind myself, if being gawked at is the price I pay to have my humanity recognized, then so be it.
Well, even a step further, like the thing that I hear from the guy that you're talking to, right, is like also another tool of resilience, right? Because a thing that you like outlined is that like because you know that you are resisting through this tool of how you are expressing yourself, right? Like you are hyper vigilant for harm, right? And he was like, yeah, and that's still fair, right? But another tool of resilience in terms of how you manage that experience is that there's a narrative here where there's actually no harm here. Instead, there's love, there's jealousy, there's like, all these other ways that I can interpret this that isn't through the lens of my insecurity about it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And that is going to be the thing that helps pull me through when it becomes hard to keep pushing and
yeah,
being resistant in this way. I
yeah.
think that's really nice.
That's a great reframe and a good explanation of that expansion. Because I think that's what we were both getting to, I think, eventually in that conversation with him. And it was beautiful to like, I mean, I haven't had a man all over me in a minute in public. And so it was nice to like see the way he was looking at me and how he was admiring my beauty and wasn't afraid to show that in public. I thought that was really beautiful. Um, I have to ask you this because we both are entrepreneurs full time. And you and I, we've been in the trenches together in more ways than one. And you and I have often have conversations about how hard this shit is. And I want to ask you this: entrepreneurship is hard. We know that, but it feels even harder in today's social and political climate. And I want to ask you this question in particular, Obella, because I know that you'll have a fire answer to this question, which is: do you view your work as an entrepreneur as a form of resistance? If so, why? If no, why not?
Um, because I love abundance, my answer is always going to be both. I think that like what doesn't feel resistant about it is that like, and I've always said this about the work, regardless, as a therapist, as whatever, as soon as money is involved, right, like the integrity of the healing work is compromised, right?
Mhm.
Like no matter what, whether we're using fair rates, whether we're not charging much, right? Like as soon as money becomes a part of the picture, right? Like it is no longer extensively about the work. And that's just like the compromise, which again, I'm not particularly trying to qualify,
Yeah.
right? I think that, I like money. If we're keeping it a buck. So like even if I were to qualify, like it wouldn't change anything about the fact that I want to do this work and I want to make money. And where those overlays happen, I need to figure out what the narrative is in a way that still serves me and holds me accountable to what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I think, not to interrupt you, but I have to say this because I think there's a difference between a conscious capitalist And that's what I identify as, a conscious
Hmm.
capitalist, someone who tries to be as mindful as possible about how I spend my money, where I spend my money. I told you this year, in the year of Bloom, I am doing every effort to keep the money within my communities. I am not trying to give folks who don't belong to my various communities any of my money, right?
Mm.
And so if you are a person of color, if you are LGBTQ, if you are disabled, and or if you exist in multiple communities that I belong to, I am prioritizing you for the opportunity.
Hmm.
That is really important to me. I think the only way we're going to survive the next 4 years of Trump again is if we continue to invest in each other, if we get back to our communal way of being and living with one another, and if we recognize that there's power in our dollars.
Right. And that, even to take that further, right, like into the, do I consider entrepreneurship resistance, right? Like, I make it, you know what I mean? Like, my, resistance, right? I am figuring out how do I do this work in a way that is offering people tools of resistance or resilience, right? Like, that is offering people tools of healing, of wellness, of whatever. And yeah, I'm gonna run me a little check off of it if I can,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm going to make sure that it's operating like in alignment with, just like my core ethos, right? Like, to this point about like conscious capitalism, right? Like, it's about like, I am going to behave in ways that are in alignment with my code of ethics.
Yeah.
Like, uh, I'm going to name my code of ethics so that it's possible for other people to hold me accountable to it, so that I can continue to evolve the image of whatever I'm doing so that it's better aligning with my principles, knowing that that is always going to be a moving like battle, but also like so is everything about being, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
always becoming more of myself. I'm always becoming, right? And so if I'm going to make that a part of how I do work, make that a part of how I resist, I'm going to figure out how do I remain open to feedback, remain like open to innovation,
Mm-mm.
while also making sure that I am pushing back and remaining super aware of what I'm pushing back against and how I'm doing that pushing back.
Yeah. And I have to ask you this because you, as a mental health professional, as someone who has seen coaches and therapists in the past for your own self, and also serve as a therapist for folks. One of the things I've learned over the last, this is the start of year 3 for me, full time entrepreneurship, and you've kind of been a witness to this journey of mine, that in many ways my mental health improved since becoming a full time entrepreneur, in the sense that every day I felt like I was waking up with a purpose. Every day I felt like I was honoring my calling. And every day, even when things were in the deficit and I didn't know how I was going to pay rent or whatever, it was the deep knowing that I was working towards something that felt in alignment
Mm.
that kept me going, right? And on the flip side, now that the stress isn't about financial stability, now it's about, okay, I put in the work, now I'm getting all these opportunities, and now I'm overwhelmed by all the opportunities, right? So there's a different level of stress there, and a different type of mental health trigger for me, right? Around, am I enough? Can I really do this? Do I have what it takes to manage all of this, right? Of course, the answer is yes, 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 I do. But it's that doubt, right? But then I think about the fact that my suicide ideation, which I've had since I was a child in grammar school, has drastically decreased in the last last
Mm.
2 years since being a full time entrepreneur. And yet there are other things that trigger my mental health, right? That make it difficult. How do you maintain your mental health and while being an entrepreneur?
Like, you said a lot of really juicy things in there, that I want to figure out how to wrap into my answer. First and foremost, I do think that like, uh, so your boy's been like depressed for the last year. Honestly, a lot longer than that, but like for sure for the last year. Um, what's cool about doing work that I know I want to do and that I love is that it was a lot easier for me to accept depression as depression rather
Mm,
than as this like weird medium where when you hate your job, it's like, am I depressed because I hate my job? Am I
Mm.
depressed because I'm depressed? Right? Like, what's actually going on in my body? Like, I was able to have clarity there in a way that I
Mm.
haven't had, honestly, maybe ever. Um,
Mm.
and that's like in the midst of the financial stress, right? Like, I haven't even gotten to the, like smooth sailing portion yet. Uh, oh, Mark, you
Okay.
froze, and I want to make sure that
I'm here.
that's
I still hear you.
all right. So like, and what I'll then say is, uh, well, actually, no. First, let me say what I do to take care of myself is I both go to individual therapy, me and my partner are in couples therapy. I like work out on a regular basis. I like do reflections around the wellness wheel on a regular basis and like journal and check in with myself. I like make sure that I'm checking in with the friends who are both good mirrors of me, but
Mm.
are not, afraid to challenge me,
Mm.
afraid to read me, um, and like who we have an established way to communicate where I know that they know they can say whatever they need to, and I'm gonna sit with it. Um, and
For,
like,
for instance, when I said to you your bio was insufficient.
period. Right? And I'm gonna go fix it. You
Yes.
know what I mean? I heard you. I say you right. And like, so like those are all the things that I'm like consistently doing. But what I'll say that like entrepreneurship added to that mix,
Mhm.
that I think was valuable was, because I was able to pull apart the like workplace slash capitalism depression from the depression,
Mhm.
is that like now I'm able to uh, create a deeper relationship with my nervous system,
Mm.
and like really meet myself at like the somatics where my mind and my body connect, because I have the clarity to know that like, oh, this is happening in my body. It's not happening in my life in the same way that it was when
Mhm.
I hated everything about my job. Right. And I think that there's a privilege there, as much as there's also a frustration at, we always want people to be able to move to the next step. And I think that mind body connection is a pretty mature step.
Yeah.
And so that can get frustrating in terms of, you know, how you're engaging with other people about it and all that stuff. But um, it like, I don't know, it helped create a better relationship with presence,
Mm.
a better relationship with my internal voice, which made me more productive because I got to like pull apart what being productive meant, and
Mm.
like got to, tap into my own rhythm. It allowed, one of the things that you said that I wanted to come back to was like, my suicidal ideation went down. And I think for you specifically, being an entrepreneur that, you know, is centered around this idea of storytelling,
Mhm.
in these years where your suicidal ideation has gone down, you've also been just like more honest and vulnerable about your mental health across the board.
Yeah.
And like, so much of that is interconnected, right? Like, so much of the pervasiveness of suicidal ideation is that people don't want to talk about it, even though it's like the most normal thing in the world, because this life is fucking hard. I can't think of anything more reasonable than not wanting to be here,
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah.
And so if we create space where we can be honest about that, it makes it a lot easier to let it go, right? It
Yeah.
makes it a lot easier to let it exist alongside all of the other things. It makes it a lot easier to hold it. And I think that, what being an entrepreneur allowed for me was to create a relationship with sadness, and like
Mm.
to like move with sadness through the day to day, right? Because when I thought it was because I hated my job, which was true, I did, those happened,
Mhm.
right? But like when it was about that, it was so hard to move through the day because moving through the day meant moving through the job and like all that other stuff, right? And so like now when I'm depressed and I'm figuring out what it means to move with a depressed body that has lower energy and all that other stuff, and I can now have this conversation with my nervous system about, being present and allowing myself to just do things slowly, just start the thing, right? Like, whatever kind words that I can use to myself rather than these really like punitive, aggressive, panicked words that were there beforehand because my body was stressed.
Mm-hmm.
It made it a lot easier to just be like, oh, I'm gonna be sad while I do this thing. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And maybe cry if it hits me the
Yes.
time, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Last week was a significant milestone in a former relationship of mine, and Sunday was his birthday. And I had texted some of my friends like, "Hey, this week grief is here to visit.
Mm.
It's hitting my body and my mind really hard. I'm really sad. Can you just check in on me throughout the week?" And I only sent it to a few people I trusted. Excuse me. Like, nowhere. Jeez, I'm sleepy. And that's after drinking a big cup of coffee. And so one friend had said to me, "I love you, but I don't want to hear anything about this person. He's like, you need to move on from him." And I'm like, I'm typically okay, but this is like an anniversary week. It's difficult. And it's his birthday. And I was like, don't personalize it. Is that person naming a boundary? And I'm going to respect it and just know that's not the person I'm going to go to if I ever feel like this again about this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It wasn't a value judgment of her or making me think of her as less of a friend or anything or any deficit. That's not what I thought. And so to acknowledge that, to be able to name that, right? And I think you and I often have conversations about like not taking everything so personal because I'm very sensitive, right? We're artists, we're creatives, we're sensitive about our shit. But one of the things I had to learn, and to your point around sadness, is like sometimes grief comes to visit me. Sometimes sadness, and I always tell people, and they always look at me like I'm wild because they're like, "But that's not what we see of you." I said my natural default is sadness. Like I'm a naturally melancholy, sad person. I think a lot of people see my personality and they see how I am in public and they see me dancing and having a good time and laughing. And that is genuine. That is authentically me in the moment. But at my everyday regular temperament, it is typically a sad temperament, right? Like I can listen to sad music all day long because that's what just moves me. That's what inspires me, right? Like as an artist, I do my best work when I'm sad, when I'm depressed, when I'm heartbroken. And so me knowing that about myself and being able to name that, I think has been a big game changer for me so that I can let people know how I'm affected throughout the work week.
100. So I do my Substack, and one of my big Substacks was Joy is a Prism, which was this conversation that I was having with so many clients, where this idea of like joy or happiness or whatever, these like things that we associate with like positive feelings, as the absence of silent or of sadness, is like exactly everything that's wrong, right? If and this also goes back to that whole conversation about like pulling apart like the connotations that we have to certain things, right? Like I don't necessarily equate this idea anymore of sad as bad, right? Like all work is grief work, right? Like all we're doing is grief work, right? Like we, especially like as entrepreneurs, right? Like you're out there telling your story, which is about grieving your past, right? Like as much as it's about celebrating your past, because that's still a part of the grief,
Yeah.
right? And so like all of these things, like we contain multitudes, feelings contain multitudes. Part of the reason you are able to move, so extrovertedly out in public is because you are sad privately, right? And not even about, maybe not even privately, but like, within the confines of your safe space, within the confines of your home, right? And also because if sadness moves you, right, like is movement not a vehicle of your joy, like you specifically? You know what I mean?
I'm a choreographer, so I love to move.
Exactly, right? And so it's like you are experiencing joy in that sadness that you are allowing yourself to exercise, right? Like, I have a lot of clients who have, maybe like large mood disorders or just like a lot of trauma, and it's like this resistance to the idea of like, oh, but it's so much to grieve about, to cry about. And it's like, okay, so do all of it, right? Like literally, it's you are more than likely in your house more than you are outside, which means that like by that standard you are sad more than you are not sad.
Yeah.
And if we remove sad as bad, right, that just means that you're sad more than you're not sad. What if you were literally just crying all those years of tears out and that's why you're able to experience the joy? Why does that have to be a bad thing? You
Mm.
know, why is there something wrong there if we can build the relationship in our body to what it means to grieve, right? Like if we
Yeah.
can create ritual with sadness, so we're not just, you know, sad and afraid of it and avoiding it. We're sad and we are leaning into it with our art, with our whatever, right? Like that's where the joy actually comes out, right? And that is a principle that it applies in so many layers, like specifically if we're talking about entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like my ability to grieve uh uh my financial situation, right, like becomes the driver to move with the work that I'm doing intentionally, right? I had this whole back and forth with myself because like I needed more money, but if I take on more therapy clients, which would give me more money, it also removes the amount of free time I have to be able to take on contracting work when it comes, which it will, you know, because now I'm having to shift my schedule around these people that I'm seeing weekly, bi-weekly, you know,
Yeah.
at best monthly. Right. And so it's like, I don't want to take on more to solve this initial need. And that's me literally grieving the 20-year-old me who was working 4 jobs because whenever money was tight, I just got another job. Right. Like it was so instinctual at the time. And it's like, oh, you were burning yourself out. You also were getting the flu every year and it would put you down for like a week, like all these other things. And it's like, okay, if I do that grief, if I allow myself to be sad,
Yeah.
right, then what sadness is going to do in my body is slow me down, and I can't take on another job if I'm moving slowly,
Yeah.
right? I would have to be
You also
ignoring
can't
the
show up for
sadness.
your clients the way you need to. You know,
Absolutely.
and I think, and one of the things, like, so one of the things that I tell all my coaching clients, and this is true for both of us, both me and the client, there is a 24-hour cancellation policy that you have to cancel within 24 hours of your session, or else you forfeit that session. However, the caveat to that is, if you wake up that morning and your mental health is bad, and you tell me, Mark, I can't show up the way I need to for this session, I need to cancel it, I will not forfeit for you. Just like me, I may have to reschedule you last minute, meaning the day of, because sometimes I don't know when I'm going to wake up in a weird mental health space. And what I know to be true as a coach, and why I'm not a therapist like you are, which you deal with a lot of different complexities than I do, as someone who likes to be fully present for my clients, if I'm not in the right headspace, I can't show up as a good coach. And so I will reschedule that session because you deserve to have me at my fullest potential when you work with me.
Mm.
And that is a rule I set for myself. I was like, the only way I'm going to be a coach if I set that condition for myself and my clients, because I don't think it's fair for me to force myself to get through the day of meetings and not be able to show up the way I need to for you.
100%.
That does
100%.
a disservice to you, to me, you know, to the work and the values that I believe in, right? And so, yeah, man,
And so much of that is about the relationship you have to your body, right? Like your
yeah,
body is talking to you, right, as
mhm,
much as your mind is. And if you don't know how to listen to those cues and listen to how they intersect, you also might move in ways that dishonor it in either direction also. Like
mhm,
sometimes you might pull back from something that would be really advantageous for you to push through to do, right? But you won't know if you're just like mindlessly adhering to anything your body tells you to do or
right.
anything your mind is like,
A
ability
perfect
to
example of that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, you're fine. Go ahead.
A perfect example of that is yesterday. As it was a really busy Monday, and I was getting through my list, but it wasn't like I wasn't getting through things fast enough. It was just so much going on. And then 5:30 came, and I was like, I need to get ready for the kickboxing class. And then my friend picked me up to go kickboxing with me, and so he was here like at 5:45. And so I got there. By the time we did kickboxing, cooled down, ran a quick errand, and then he dropped me off, I was having dinner while working at my desk around 8 o'clock.
Mm.
And the workout that I went to initially, I was tired, I was overwhelmed, I was like, I had so much on my mind because I have all this work still to do. one which was sending you the event doc, which I didn't get to send you until this morning. And then the workout helped me, and I got to punch something out. I got to get the stress out of my body and do something good for my body. And then I came home and I had a second wind of energy to get through another 2 hours worth of work, right? And so it's me being intentional that those kickboxing classes, which I'm paying monthly for, are not an optional thing for me to do. It is a requirement for me to take care of my body. Because if I'm moving my body, I'm processing the stress, I'm processing the grief, I'm processing the whatever feelings I have about whatever's going on. I'm processing it and I'm taking it out on the back.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a mean hook, right? And so I'm punching, I'm hooking, like Jerry, my friend, who's also the coach and the owner of Nine Round on Peachtree in Atlanta. She's like, when I first met you and I saw your nails, I was like, Oh, and then suddenly, she's like, then you put on the gloves and you started swinging. I was like, she was like, oh, hold up, he got a little trade in him or something. And so I was like, yeah, I'm definitely if I'm aggressive. Like I can swing and punch and throw, and I have power, and I still have long nails or longest
Mhm.
nails, and and it's like there's all this duality of me, right? And I know that like moving my body as a dancer, as a choreographer, is how I also process emotions. And so
Mhm.
kickboxing is an extension of that, right? Because in my mind, I look at the combinations as a phrase, as a choreographic movement phrase. And so when she says, I want you to give me a right hook, a left jab, uppercut, and then a side kick, I think of the movement. Okay, first step, boom, 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 kick, right? And so it becomes a choreographic movement for me. And I'm thinking about how my body is
Mhm.
moving through each each round. Yeah.
I love that. I was about to go on a tangent about martial arts, but I feel like that's separate. We'll have that conversation
Yeah.
another
Yeah. We'll be
time.
in Atlanta, which you and Corey are overdue for a visit.
We are.
I will take you to Jerry's gym.
Yes.
She makes me look like I'm not a morning person. Like, and I'm a morning person, and like that I'm like high energy in the morning. Her default is
Up,
beyond, like, yeah, beyond my capacity. Like even I get a little like, oh girl, I
up.
love her, but I'm like, oh girl, you're so perky. All right, girl, I'm gonna keep swinging, but you stressing me out all that perking. But it's how she motivates you. She encourages you
Mhm.
to go and go and go and push yourself. And what I love about her is that because I'm disabled, because today is National Wear Green Day for Cerebral Palsy, I
Mhm.
work with someone who knows about my disability, who's willing to accommodate and modify things with me, and also trusts me to know my body best when it comes to modifications. And so
Mhm.
I'm able to work with someone who sees me in my fullness.
Yeah, I love that. I
Right?
love that.
So shout out to Jerry. I love you.
Bye, Lori.
And so I have to ask you this last question because we're about to wrap up soon.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for being here, by the way. I always enjoy talking to you, but it feels different talking to you in public like this because I feel like we're having a lot of the conversations we would have in private and like
Mhm.
juicy stuff for people to hear for many reasons. But I want to know, what do you hope to shift in society through your work as the radical empath?
I want to shift uh, people's perceptions of themselves.
Mm,
I think that like it cannot be understated the like tentacles of self-hatred that are like wrapped into the human experience as it currently stands. And like the reach is like everywhere, right? Like myself included. That's been like, the bulk of my journey is on unlearning that stuff. And so I want to help people shift that within themselves, which is going to allow them to be more of who they are, right? And I think that, uh, as an entrepreneur, I think that organizations, collectives, right? Like communities, all those things, like they are amalgamations of everyone within them, and they are their own being that also is susceptible to those things,
mm,
right? So, like, I want communities to shift their perceptions of themselves, right? I want organizations to shift their perceptions of themselves so that they are moving intentionally right? And it doesn't even matter where they're moving intentionally. I like, of course, have, my protopian dream of
Mm,
everything being like, perfect and, equitable. But like, I don't even care necessarily where they're going. I think that uh, shift in self awareness, shift in self perception, um, you know, cultivation of self love and self worth
mm,
uh, will point that compass in the right direction holistically.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
Obella, I love you.
I love you.
Thank you for being a real one. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being my colleague.
Retweet.
Retweet.
For
Um, when I think about the people in my life who make me feel the most seen, you're on that list. Um, so thank you. Thank you for allowing me to show up in my fullness in all of my messy glory and embracing all of my story. Um, and thank you for the work you do. I know it's not easy. We both know entrepreneurship is not easy, especially when you're a creative entrepreneur or healing in the field of, or in the field of healing others or helping others heal. Um, and this particular time feels especially scary for folks like you and I. But what I know to be true is that no matter where life takes you, you'll never let your heart harden. And I'm so proud of you for that.
I appreciate you, friend. I love you so much. I
Oh,
love the light that you shine. And I'm glad that we're connected. And
yeah.
thank you for having me as a guest on the ship.
Yeah. So this is our last live stream, y'all. I know I'm bittersweetly sad about that. Uh, but it
For
is
good reason,
what it
though.
is for good reason. Yes. My motto for the next 6 months is work smarter, not harder. And so we are shifting the shift from a live stream multi-platform series to just being a multi-platform series. So you won't get the live component, but you will get content weekly from the shift, I promise. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, or YouTube, wherever you watch these conversations. It's really important for us that people share and engage with this content because I'm investing time and resources into this series, and it's a free resource for everyone. And so I really want to invite our audience, people who tend to follow my work, because it's never your friends and family who love to watch your stuff. I can say there's literally people in my family and friends list who deeply love me who never engage with my work stuff,
It'd be like that.
and I'm just like, okay,
I
whatever.
know.
That's just not how I operate because I feel like I try to engage in everyone's work in some capacity, right? Whether I'm promoting it or sharing it or speaking their name in rooms they're not in, but it doesn't matter. It is what it is. But I want to encourage y'all to go ahead and promote, share, subscribe, comment, rate this podcast wherever you listen. Be sure to follow Obella Obbo on Instagram at Obella Obbo, OBELLA OBBO. You can also connect with him on LinkedIn. You can also go to his Substack, which is
The Radical Empath.
The Radical Empath on Substack. Uh, by the way, Obbo is also one of my coaching clients for the pilot of, I believe it was Storytellers Speak. And together we came up with The Radical Empath. And I'm just really proud of you for all the ways you've grown your business over the last 2 years.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, y'all. That's all I had. That's all he wrote. That's all I wrote. That's all I have for today. Make sure that you reach out to someone in your life who may have cerebral palsy and tell them that you see them, that you love them, that you accept them, that you recognize their full humanity. As someone who is constantly dealing with a disabled body, who's not seen as disabled, I constantly have to advocate for myself and let people know, hey, this is what I need. This is my accessibility. I can't walk for too long. I can't stand for too long, etc. Sometimes I'm going to trip and fall and embarrass myself in public because it happens, but I'll be okay. And so, in honor of today, make sure you reach out to folks who have CP who you love and let them know that you see them, that you love them, and that you recognize their full humanity. Because together we can shift the way we live, the way we lead, and the way we love each other and ourselves. Be well.